Sekiro Shadows Die Twice on the Steam Deck OLED. This game is verified, so should be pretty easy to get up and running. So here we are, welcome to Sekiro. And as you can see, the game is at 60 FPS. And unfortunately the limit is 60. You can do unlock frame rates with mods, but I recommend you do not do that because it's kind of a pain in the ass to set up. And you're not missing much in my opinion because we're not hitting 90s on this hardware. So 800p on the advanced settings is basically like this. If you see my other video checking this out on Steam Deck LCD, you'll see a couple settings here are on medium or low, but going lower than this, in my opinion, doesn't make a lot of sense. Performance is almost the same. So coming back to the game, apart from the 60 FPS lock, there is black bars at the top and bottom of the screen. So the game is forced 16:9. Again, you can download a mod to fix that. You get a few less frames because higher resolution. And looking into the distance, well, first of all, since the game is a 60 FPS title, unfortunately, at least lower the frame limit to 60 so the screen matches 60 Hz. So now instead of 90 Hz, we're at 60 because the game doesn't go above 60. At least not without modding, but again, I think it's kind of a pain in the ass to set it up, at least on SteamOS, especially if you're a new user. And when it comes to performance, as you can see, it's pretty good so far. I'm actually pretty impressed because this game on AMD GPUs tends to be pretty CPU limited. Here it doesn't seem to be the case. It's been a while since I played this, holy hell. Usually this game is very CPU limited on AMD GPUs. Not sure why that happens, but it does happen. In this case, we're mostly GPU bound, which is good, is what we usually want, and we're at native resolution. The good thing about the OLED Steam Deck on a forced 16:9 game with the black bars at the top and bottom of the screen, due to being an OLED screen, those black pixels actually turn off the pixels once they're black, so it doesn't feel like black bars, it just feels that the screen is a bit tinier, which is pretty interesting because those pixels are completely turned off. On the LCD deck, this will look like some weird gray thing because it's an LCD panel, and when you put pure black on an LCD panel, it will be like some weird washed out gray, dark gray color, depending on the panel, of course. So, well, you might say, okay, the game runs at 50 to 60, there's nothing else to be done. Well, I disagree with that statement, because there are some drops here and there. It's not perfect 60s, and depending on what's going on, it can drop pretty hard in certain sections. Alright, so very quickly I'm going to the entrance of this castle. And this guy is going to free himself, and there will be effects on screen. And we're looking at stuff into the distance, and as you can see, it can momentarily drop into the 40s. Again, I'm cherry picking this section of the game, obviously. But this will be something that could definitely happen. So there are drops in the mid-50s, there's some judder here and there. So my advice, first of all, before my face finish getting reflected, is to lock it to 50 for more consistency. So go into the three dots, frame rate, lock it to 50, so the screen is at 50 Hz. If you want also, there's an option to lock it to 45, so the screen will be 90 Hz, but it will lock it to 45. So for some people this looks more consistent, not sure how, but that's also an option if you want more consistency. I think 50s feels good enough, and the game can achieve that pretty well. So 50, and we're unplugging the charger. And apologies about the flickering on the screen. When you're using 50 Hz, since we're recording at 60 Hz, sometimes the camera goes a little bit nuts. But I fixed it, or attempted to fix it. So as you can see, we got 50 Hz, some drops into the 40s. Again, if you want 100% more consistency, lock it to 45, I think it still looks pretty good. But 50s feels that little bit smoother. So yeah, this is how I would personally play the game. I don't mind some drops when traversing and looking into the distance. So this is what I would personally use, but I think most people are going to want 45 because it's half 90 Hz. And it still feels pretty smooth. It's a 5 FPS difference. So let's go into a different location. Alright, so now on purpose, I'm in a place with lots of effects on screen. Here I usually drop frames quite a bit when going through those corners. So there's some stutter here and there. I just should stay pretty close to the 50s. I'm talking about battery life, around 3 hours of battery like this. If you want a bit more battery life, you probably want, again, the 45 FPS configuration. And as you can see, those fire effects are not nice with the frame rate, so maybe after all, personally I don't mind those drops here and there. Unless we're talking about drops from 60 to 40, 50 to 45, I don't mind. So now 45 FPS, just to show you that there are less drops below this number and it should be more consistent. Now we got basically the deck running at 90 Hz with a 45 FPS cap. This doesn't free us 100% of the drops. That seems to be a game issue, especially in this level when turning a corner. And the frame times are not perfect. That seems to be a From Software Games issue. So also, when you change the settings, I highly recommend you restart the game. It should improve frame times. But again, frame times on this are not perfect. But again, I'm cherry picking levels. But you're probably going to spend a lot of time here. I wouldn't say it's a huge deal. But you need to be aware that that exists. So going into a place with lots of fire and a good amount of enemies is a good idea for stress testing. I'm going to show you another level after this one. But so far so good. I think 45 stays, well, so far it's more consistent than 50, that's for sure. I like the slight extra smoothness of 50 FPS, but 45 seems to be the most consistent out of the bunch. You can also do 40s, but I don't think, I mean 40s is nice, but if you can do 45, do 45. Also, it helps with battery life. We're over 3 hours a battery at 45. At 50 it was more like 2 hours 40 minutes, 2 hours 50. So yeah, probably 3.5 hours of battery like this. Right now we're in the Hirata state, but we have a nice draw distance over there. And by nice I mean it's a place that it's pretty far away. As you can see, there's stuff popping in, that's part of the game. And it's a little bit less demanding because we're not getting burning buildings all over the place. There is fewer enemies. He hits right away, holy hell, I'm not used to this. It's clear that I haven't played this game in a while. By the way, if you want to play this game, it's pretty hardcore. And it's definitely not going to hold your hand. Which in my opinion is a good thing, but I don't have time to practice nowadays. I used to play it a lot, but I never actually finished it. If I was younger, I'll probably get through it, because a lot more free time. But nowadays I just want to sit and play games. And sometimes this one is a little bit too taxing on me. But if you get the hang of it, I highly recommend it, it's pretty good. But as you can see, mostly 45, some frame time inconsistency here and there. Loading new parts of the map, that's why sometimes we get a spike in the frame time. Not a huge deal in my opinion. You stick to 45 pretty often, the game looks pretty smooth, way better than playing at 30 FPS. We're at native resolution, we have basically high settings with shaders on medium to get that small extra GPU advantage. But as you can see again, the frame time spike there was because it was loading another piece of the level. And you're probably not going to be playing like this, just running from one corner to another. At least not at the beginning. Maybe later when you get... Ooh. Oh god. Maybe later when you're in a part that you just want to skip a bunch of parts, to say it in some way. You'll do this, but it's pretty unusual. And finally the dilapidated temple, which is basically the hub area. You can practice here and all that. If you play the game, you know what I'm talking about. Let me increase the brightness a bit. There we go. And this part is way less demanding than the parts that I showed you before this. Has a lot of... This is more of a traversal part. More open. And as you can see, it's not as taxing on the hardware, so the 3.5 hour battery that I told you could be extended a little bit because not the entire game is the stress points that I showed you. So yeah, would I recommend Sekiro on the Steam Deck OLED? Yes, but either locked at 50 or at 45 FPS. Can you do 50 FPS? Yeah, there will be drops into the 40s because it's the nature of the game. Sometimes it likes to drop. But if you look into 45, it should stay there more consistently. So yeah, 45 should be king. Personally, since I'm a person that likes being at 50 FPS, I'm just a pain in the ass. Basically, I look at stuff like this all the time, so I notice. I do 50s with some drops into the 40s, no big deal. But 45 I think is the sweet spot. And you get that extra half an hour battery. Instead of 3 hours, you get 3.5. That's pretty cool, in my opinion. But I wish From Software gave us officially the option for 16:10. Instead of 16:9 and an analog frame rate. That would be awesome, above 60. I tried also this on the ROG Ally. It's mostly 50 to 60 as well. It also drops into the 50s in the random sections. So again, my advice, 45. If you are more of an annoying person like me that likes to look at a bit higher frame rates, 50s can also happen. Come on, attack me. So it's verified and I completely agree. The game works fantastically well on Steam Deck. And while it can hit 60s very often, it will drop into the 50s and 40s. So my advice is to just keep it, again, as I repeated multiple times, at 50 or 45, just for consistency's sake. How does he grab me like that? I don't know, but that's okay. And you get a good amount of battery life. If you want even more battery life, lock it to 45, and if you're an extreme person that wants even more battery life, lock it to 30. But I think this is good enough. 3.5 hours is pretty damn good, in my opinion. Consider we're playing a AAA game over here. So yeah. Good stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Also, on the Steam Deck OLED, one final recommendation. So as I was saying, as a final recommendation is to pause the game. Pause the game. Go into options, into sound and display, and go to adjust brightness, and maybe, just maybe, lower it to 3 or 4 and increase the brightness of the screen, and it will look like, well, in my opinion, much better. It will be darker, but you can also see those dark spots in the OLED screen. And in my opinion, it just pops more. It doesn't feel like a gray looking game in the dark parts. It also has HDR, but personally I like the look without HDR. Personal preference, of course. If you want to use HDR, sound on display, HDR, picture quality adjustment. The Steam Deck OLED goes to 1000 nits, up to 1000 nits, so maximum brightness 1000. Here, adjust the brightness to your liking. Personally, I think 5 or 4 is good enough, and you can also choose the color saturation. Maybe at 6 is good enough, and now you can also go in the Steam Deck menu and increase the brightness more, but this looks a little bit washed out. I'm not sure if I'm doing something wrong. But anyway, that would be my advice. If you want to use HDR, do it. Personally, I think by just turning off HDR and adjusting the brightness to 3 looks perfectly fine. That with a 45 FPS option and increasing the brightness, it looks amazing on the OLED screen. The game looks fantastic, super sharp. I just wish they added 16:10. That would make it god tier when it comes to the options on the Steam Deck OLED. One of the most perfect games for this system, at least in my opinion. It's just that the frame times are a little bit garbage. That's basically it. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did revisiting Sekiro. I also tried this on the Steam Deck OLED, on the Steam Deck LCD and the ROG Ally if you want to check those out. Links in the pinned comment. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye guys. Thanks for watching.